Debut performances are inherently retrospective of a career. You can look at someone stepping into film for the first time 1,000 times, but it only becomes important when you see the ways that they've done it over and over after that.
There are people who take Hollywood by storm in their first scene, and then there's people who it takes a long, long, long time for them to break through. Whatever the trajectory of an actor's career, their debut is a really fascinating thing to return to.
If there's a performer that you really love, someone that really resonates with you, I would suggest you look at their debut performance. It could be very revealing.
Whether it's an ingenue making some sparkling debut or an old Broadway star finally gracing the screen, everyone's got to start somewhere.
If you're going to start out as an actor, why not start by being eaten by a slimy Freddy Krueger?
Even though she came from a family of actors, Patricia Arquette said that a lot of the technical elements of filmmaking were incredibly hard. And it was an incredibly technical film. You see her being eaten by a giant Freddy snake. You don't kind of learn that stuff on the street. She actually says that Lawrence Fishburne, who was on the film with her and a bunch of young actors, taught them a lot about how to work with lights and be on camera.
She's got that scream queen nature where she maintains that shriek throughout the film.
What she brings in this performance is the believability that she'd make it to the end, but not in that girl next door, she's hot but fragile but untouched kind of way, which is what you're used to seeing in horror movies.
Patricia Arquette is one of those actors that is very approachable in her screen presence.
Kristen is the key. She has a very special talent, a gift.
I haven't been able to do that since I was a little girl.
You did it the other night. That was different.
She's just this really cute girl. She's very quiet, but when she's ready to fight, she's gonna fight.
She does manage to pull some things off that I think a lesser actor wouldn't. For instance, when she's in these dreams in slow motion, carrying a little skeleton, it could look absolutely stupid, but she really brings some reality to it.
The horror genre has a way of pushing actors to these really extreme places where you will not get to see these kinds of performances in any other type of film.
Quite a few Oscar nominees early in their career fought Freddy Krueger, but only one of them managed to both beat Freddy and win the Oscar, and that's Patricia Arquette.
What is there to say about Lauren Bacall in this movie? She comes on screen, she talks in that low, sultry voice of hers, and it just transcends time.
Anybody got a match?
She has a presence on screen that is like no other woman performer around that time.
It's one of the most drop-dead debuts in movie history. The camera just cannot take its eyes off of her.
Thanks.
One of my favorite anecdotes from this movie was that in Howard Hawks' biography, they talk about how he actually worked with Lauren Bacall to get rid of those feminine traits that he found to be the worst parts of women, specifically the idea of having a higher pitched voice. He didn't think that women having screechy voices when they were angry was very becoming of a woman, so he was partly responsible for Lauren Bacall adopting such a lower, husky tone.
What'd you do that for?
Been wondering whether I'd like it.
What's the decision?
I don't know yet.
The chemistry between Bogart and Bacall was absolutely palpable. And of course, they fell in love. And as a result of that, not only made several movies together, but got married and became one of the most famous couples in Hollywood.
Everyone says it was totally electric. Apparently it made Howard Hawks very angry, but the truth is they did really love each other. And eventually Howard Hawks realized that this chemistry was coming through on the screen and would make the film even better.
The rumor is that Hawks took this sort of illicit, philandering romance between them and worked with it. Every day he would sort of sit down, they'd read through the script, and then he'd add all kinds of innuendos for them to toss back and forth at each other, get them all really kind of, excited and hot for each other, and then that's when he would roll camera.
You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow.
The thing you have to acknowledge about Lauren Bacall in To Have and Have Not is that she is 19 and Bogart decidedly isn't. But they feel like equals the moment they're on the screen together. And it is a stunning debut.
There's some people that show up just fully formed of exactly who they're going to be in their debut feature, and James Caan is exactly one of those people.
Caan in the trailer for Lady in a Cage was billed as the muscler. It's appropriate because he was coming from a background in college football. He's really bringing a lot of brawn, a lot of brute force to this film, but he's channeling that through his psychology as well as his physicality.
James Caan in Lady in a Cage is like a mad dog unleashed onto the screen. He taunts and he attacks, and he feels legitimately dangerous in this role.
I did tell you, leave your shirt on.
James Caan in this role is playing off of Olivia de Havilland, and their cat and mouse power struggle has a lot of sexual implications, which is actually the, I would say, nucleus of the film.
We have James Caan with a nylon stocking over his head. There's a lot of sexual threat here. And I really see him kind of channeling the brute force that he would distill into his character of Sonny Corleone in The Godfather just a few years later.
Lady in a Cage isn't necessarily a classy debut for James Caan, but I think you see a lot of his raw talent and a lot of his acting skill. And even somebody as classy as Olivia de Havilland thought he had a real future.
Keith David in The Thing brings so much gravitas to his character, so much Shakespearean know-how. It is shocking that this is his first performance on film. He comes with this knowledge of how to put so much weight into what he's saying.
So how do we know who's human? If I was an imitation, a perfect imitation, how would you know if it was really me?
In The Thing, Keith David is kind of that angry everyman in the sense that, like, you are on his side, how he doubts and how he's getting involved.
He had a lot of nerves starting The Thing, and especially about the way that he talked. He said at the time he was actually a diction coach. He taught elocution, and he was very worried about saying lines like, "Do you believe this voodoo bullshit?" and having it come out like a fancy boy.
I just cannot believe any of this voodoo bullshit.
One thing that Keith David does better than anyone else is yell. He is one of the best on-screen yellers, and watching him go from a place where he's calm to escalated rage is so much fun to watch. The one scene that sticks out in particular is where they're all tied up waiting for their blood test results. It is such a great scene, and he just really sells every single moment of it.
Come on, get me out of here! Cut me loose, damn it!
What's really interesting in Keith David's debut here is that he makes it to the end of the movie. And when you're going up against the likes of Wilford Brimley and Kurt Russell, and you're the last guy, it just puts a lot of pressure on the performance, and he seems so comfortable as Lee Childs.
He's also a rare example of a Black character who survives to the end of the film. As for whether he survives after the film, well, I'll leave that for the audience to decide.
Another Country comes out in 1984, and it's the debut of Rupert Everett and Colin Firth.
Probably the thing about watching Rupert Everett in Another Country now is that you have baby Colin Firth next to him, and it's kind of a distraction because Colin Firth has aged and Rupert Everett has sort of just perfected himself. Everett is an actor with a model's look. He's got this chiseled thing going for him. Watching him here, it's like he's playing with his instrument, like he's figuring out how best to present himself in a film that idealizes him as a romantic object.
The character of Guy Bennett is based on Guy Burgess. He was a member of the Cambridge 5 spy ring. He's someone who defected to the Soviet Union in 1951, and this means that Rupert Everett actually had a real referent to draw from for his performance.
England, country, duty, and religion are themes of this film, and they really clash well against the queer themes that Rupert Everett's character brings into another country.
Rupert Everett initially played this character on the stage. It's a very kind of stagey movie. He hadn't yet quite come out as gay when the movie was released. He would do so in 1989, but the sort of passion and the fury of being forced to exist in this semi-closeted state is very, palpable.
I love him. Oh, come on, Guy. Look, I'm not going to pretend anymore. I'm sick of pretending. You think it's all a joke, well, it's not. I am never going to love women.
Don't be ridiculous.
Martin, I knew that about himself when he was 10. He told me.
You can't possibly know a thing like that at 10 or now.
Yes, you can.
To understand the kind of buzz Rupert Everett had, he was the lead in Another Country on the West End against Kenneth Branagh. His understudy was Daniel Day-Lewis. He was really considered the best actor of his day. The only reason we don't say Rupert Everett's name alongside people like Colin Firth, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Kenneth Branagh is he actually took time off early in his career. He went to Paris, he tried singing, but he is a part of this massive movement, and this movie really shows it.
When we're introduced to Jane Fonda's character in Tall Story, she's on a bicycle that is out of control and she crashes into two older men. It's a moment where you really can tell that Jane Fonda is going to make an impact in Hollywood.
Professor Osman, this is lucky. I was just on my way to see you.
One of the most remarkable careers in Hollywood history is the career of Jane Fonda, of course, the daughter of Henry Fonda. She had no interest in following the career of her father in films until she met up with the Actors Studio teacher and instructor, Lee Strasberg, and that inspired her to become an actor.
This is Jane's first on-screen appearance, and it's interesting because the role that she plays, June Ryder, is kind of the antithesis of the Jane Fonda that we've come to know. We think of Jane being very politically motivated, very independent, but in this film, all she cares about is getting married.
Tall Story is a fluffy film, but I think one of the things you can really see through Jane's performance and Anthony Perkins is the difference between method acting and the kind of silly golden age of Hollywood comedy you would see. I think especially in the scene where she asks him to kiss her neck, you are seeing this just insane amount of chemistry.
She's so wonderful, she's so charming, and I think she had a little bit of a crush on Anthony Perkins, as one does when they were shooting the film, which created a little bit of a background drama because apparently the director also had a little bit of a crush on him as well.
Fonda had experience with modeling, but when she was shooting Tall Story, she experienced a lot of scrutiny with her look. People wanted her to pull her back molars so that her jawline would be more svelte. She was suffering from bulimia, she was suffering from insomnia and incredible anxiety attacks, and yet you never see any glimmer of that in this very effervescent performance.
Ultimately, in spite of Jane Fonda seeing Tall Story as just a little piece of fluff, I think that this movie has such wonderful chemistry between its leads and just a fun way to see her start her career.
In the great tradition of cinema verite, Alejandro Inarritu makes a masterpiece. You feel like you're watching a documentary. It's so real, it's so gritty. Mexico City is terrifying. It's like New York City in the 70s. And you have this young man with his dog, and you see the debut of Gael Garcia Bernal. You've never seen him before, but he is absolutely convincing as this character, and he makes you convinced you're watching a documentary of Mexico City.
Gael plays Octavio, somebody from kind of a working class Mexican background. He became known for these kind of roles, these real Mexicans showing truth on screen.
I think there's something about his look, about the way he carries himself, his authenticity, that makes him such a great fit to play like the populist hero for Latin American communities.
¿Qué pasó? Ten. Son nuestros, ¿eh? Nada más que no los vayas a andar dejando por ahí porque luego mi hermano se los chinga.
Ay, no inventes.
Gael Garcia Bernal is coming from a sort of Mexican dynasty of acting. Both of his parents were in the industry, and as a kid, he was a child actor who appeared in a lot of kids' television, as well as telenovelas.
Gael Garcia Bernal was so not ready for Amores Perros to be a big deal that he actually filmed it just on Easter break from school. So he actually asked producers to make sure they mailed him a VHS. He didn't think it would ever be on screen. The international success of Amores Perros also made Gael Garcia Bernal a name across the world. So people got to know his face more and more, and his career just grew from there.
If you're looking at the cover art for 1986's Wildcats, you probably just think it's a Goldie Hawn starring vehicle, which it is, but there's quite a cool supporting cast that includes a young Woody Harrelson.
Okay, the first thing you need to know about Woody Harrelson is he's not as dumb as he plays. Like, no one is as dumb as the characters he plays, which is sort of his selling point. He can make you believe that he doesn't understand words in a certain order.
Woody Harrelson's debut in Wildcats, I think, is very interesting because it happened around the same time as he got Woody in Cheers, and you see these two paths for him. In this, he's like a bit of a darker jock, and he's quite athletic. It happens again throughout his career that he gets these athletic roles, but I think that they just didn't see the gentleness in him in this film.
It's a testament to Woody Harrelson's performance here in his debut role that we really hate him in the beginning of the film, but as he comes around to Goldie Hawn's character's love of the game, we kind of learn to like him as well.
I guess I ain't the quarterback no more, huh?
Guess not.
Did I ever tell you what a good slot back I am?
You're hired. Thanks, crew.
Wildcats is also very fun because it is the debut of Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes, two people who would make 4 movies together who are lifelong friends. And they were both cast because they were actors but a little more athletic.
They have this Bill and Ted energy before Bill and Ted even existed. And because of that chemistry, which isn't the main thrust of the film, you start paying attention to them. So whenever they're in a scene together, you're just kind of watching them nudge each other and goof on each other and just react to stuff. And you think, I'm having fun watching these guys. The movie's not very good, but that doesn't matter. These guys are making it worthwhile. And then gradually it's like, oh no, these are 2 incredibly gifted comic performers, and I'm going to watch them wherever they go for the rest of their careers.
Very few people have made the transition from music to acting look as seamless as Ice Cube did with Boys in the Hood.
Circa the late 80s, early 90s, Ice Cube was sort of one of the most dangerous rappers in America. He was part of the group known as NWA. He was sort of the breakout star of that group as a rapper, along with the producer Dr. Dre.
Ice Cube is the only consistent figure, I think, in this cross-pollinating world of hip-hop and movies. You know what I mean? Like, as a guy that went from a rapper to an actor and existed in both worlds and kind of represented the culture on so many fronts, like, he is that guy. Boys in the Hood helped achieve what sometimes rap could not. It helped white America and the critical establishment see this story and see it not just as angry and vulgar rap. There is like a human story, a tragic story here.
Doughboy is living a movie in his head that isn't reflected in the world around him. Doughboy is the hero of his own story, and it gives him an excuse. It gives him a place to put his anger, it gives him a place to swagger, it gives him a place to be a big hero, to the point where the film's climax is structured around him straight up murdering people. This is not a good thing. The actor knows it and the character doesn't, and again, right in that second, it's like, oh yeah, Ice Cube's a movie star.
John Singleton was actually so dead set on Ice Cube playing Doughboy that apparently Ice Cube totally failed the first audition. But Singleton gave him the entire script, said, read this whole thing and come back and do it again. And he was absolutely right, because the second time he totally nailed it. What's probably obvious that John Singleton saw in Ice Cube is his ability to kind of be, you know, a gangsta, a hard man. But what really comes through in Boys in the Hood is his vulnerability. Obviously the last scene when he's discussing that his brother's death didn't even get on the news.
Either they don't know, don't show, I don't care about what's going on in the hood.
It was one thing to be a cool gangster on screen, but to be open and vulnerable, that's real acting.
He would go on to maybe be a bigger movie star, but I think Boys in the Hood's the best movie that he ever acted in.
Ashley Judd obviously has kind of an interesting history. Her sister and mother were famous country musicians, but she really wanted to be an actress and she really worked towards it.
On full display here in Ruby in Paradise is Ashley Judd's authentic Kentucky accent, and I think it's one of my favorite accents of the 1990s.
Chambers Beach Emporium, but I'm not allowed to have visitors.
Is that a fact?
Mm-hmm.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, everybody's got to eat sometime.
Would you promise not to say another word about plants?
What's a plant?
There weren't that many female coming-of-age movies in the early 90s, so this one really stood out. It was kind of a Sundance darling. It also didn't hurt that Ashley Judd has this astonishingly beautiful face. About 9 minutes into the movie, you see her really crack her first big smile, and like her cheeks just seem to liquefy, and you can hear like the angels singing in the background, and you're just on her side from that moment on.
Ruby in Paradise is also a great showcase for Ashley Judd because it involves these kind of long, languid voiceovers. So she's talking a lot, but also silently acting a lot. You see a lot in her face. A lot is just through movement and what she does.
What Ashley Judd does in this film is probably one of her finest work, and I know it's her debut, but she is just so powerful, and a lot of it is through contemplation and meditation, which is really hard to do.
As a young actor in a leading role, Ashley Judd was clearly playing the long game. Her performance is so restrained for most of the film. I think she understands that when her scene partner has something interesting to do, it only makes her character seem that much more rich in the long run if she allows that scene partner to take all the focus.
In praising Ashley Judd, Roger Ebert said of this performance that it stops being a performance and just becomes someone you know.
It's almost a documentary style performance. She never tips her hat at all. She's just being, and it's beautiful.
Top Secret is one of those comedy movies that has become one of the funniest of all time, and I think that has a lot to do with Val Kilmer's central performance.
He's great. He's obviously incredibly good looking and not at all afraid to look ridiculous.
One of the best stories about the audition process of Top Secret is the fact that a lot of great young actors showed up, tried and didn't really get it. Then Val Kilmer shows up, apparently dressed with a pompadour, kind of like James Dean. He sang Elvis songs that he prepared for whatever reason, and apparently at the end, he produced a hidden bowling pin and juggled a bit.
He is so cute as Nick Rivers. That's sort of like an Elvis type of pop star.
Aren't you Nick Rivers, the American rock and roll star?
No, I'm not.
Oh, but you must be. Won't you sing us just one song?
Oh, I'm sorry. You must have me confused with somebody else. I'm, Mel Torme.
Val makes the girls swoon like crazy and makes me swoon, to be honest. He's so cute in the film. And this is when he was a young guy in Hollywood dating everybody from Cher to God knows who.
There's a very gentle nod to the real-life Val Kilmer in Top Secret, and when his character is in jail, we have a headshot of Cher pasted up on the wall. This is a young actor that if you look at his romantic liaisons during this time, it's mind-blowing.
This was the follow-up movie by Zucker Abrams' Zucker to Airplane, and though it was less successful at the time, I like it better. I think it has some of the funniest moments ever in a movie, particularly the underwater fight scene that Kilmer does.
In filming Top Secret's underwater sequence, which is my favorite part of the film, Val Kilmer earned his diving certification. This is someone who really did the work for this role.
It's got to be one of the most guileless, deadpan, brilliantly stupid performances of the decade.
Val Kilmer thinks it's a real blessing to have Top Secret as his first movie because he said to this day people kind of come up to him and quote the movie to him and talk to him about it, and that's just an amazing thing for your first movie.
Diane Lane has a great entrance in A Little Romance. You know, she's quietly reading a book in her little knee socks. And then when you finally see her face, she has this unbelievable angel face, this kind of grave beauty for a 12, 13-year-old girl that is, it just like makes your jaw drop.
There's a trap in movies where children who are wise beyond their years can start to feel grating or annoying to the audience after a while. However, Diane Lane puts this idea to rest completely by giving one of the most intelligent and naturalistic performances from any child ever.
We could go to Germany. We've never been there together.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. Maybe somehow we could arrange for you to meet Heidegger.
He died 3 years ago.
Oh. Well, we probably don't want to bother him.
No.
I find that precocious child romance isn't necessarily something that typically works, but here it does, and it's mostly because the performances really sell it. Specifically, Diane Lane in her debut role, it really works because it's believable and just because of how much talent she exudes on screen. She's just so endlessly watchable.
Most 13-year-olds wouldn't have even known who Sir Laurence Olivier was, but Diane Lane was so honored to get to perform with him.
Laurence Olivier took one look at Diane Lane as he was doing his scenes with her, and he's like, oh, you are the next Grace Kelly. You're so professional, you have this elegance, this regality.
That's a lot of pressure for a young actor to have to live up to, but Diane Lane does it. She ends up working with Francis Ford Coppola on his next couple of pictures, and then pretty soon she's sort of everywhere. So this is one of those debuts that really very, very quickly panned out.
It's really a miraculous journey to think about how Shirley MacLaine went from a theatrical understudy to Alfred Hitchcock's youngest ingenue and then won the Golden Globe for Best New Performer that year in 1955.
Shirley MacLaine has one of those great discovery stories. She was a chorus girl in an understudy in Pajama Game. The lead actress injured herself, and she took the lead role on the same day that Hal B. Wallace, a big Hollywood producer, was in the crowd.
Alfred Hitchcock allegedly said he wanted to make The Trouble with Harry a starless picture. And of course, he failed spectacularly. Shirley MacLaine was a massive star. It's just that audiences hadn't met her yet.
Hitchcock was actually known for drawing in a lot of famous actors, not necessarily breaking somebody new.
Hitchcock, in his way, obviously saw something in her because it's really kind of interesting to watch, even from her first movie, how quickly the MacLaine persona is sort of established. Frisky, irrepressible, with a sense of humor, and strangely very sexy.
He's in a deep sleep. A deep, wonderful sleep. How'd it hurt his head? Putting it where it wasn't wanted would be my guess. Will it get better? Not if we're lucky.
She is amazing in it, but she is not a Hitchcock woman.
When you think of Hitchcock's female characters, you think of the Hitchcock blonde, you know, the Grace Kellys and Kim Novaks and Ingrid Bergmans, and she's quite different to that.
The Trouble with Harry is a rare instance of Hitchcock working in the pure comic genre, and I think it works really well to have Shirley MacLaine not be the prototypical Hitchcock ingenue.
You can see why watching this, Billy Wilder was like, I want her, because she knows exactly what movie she's in. Her character always knows that she's joking. There's a blackness and a wryness to her performance that is absolutely not a Hitchcock lead, but is a Wilder lead.
Shirley MacLaine is such a classic, almost like a screwball type of actress. She's incredibly funny, just almost innately.
You can't ask for a more firecracker start to a long and fascinating career.
It's hard to think of a 90s studio movie that hinges as much on an unknown actor as Primal Fear does on Edward Norton.
Primal Fear was a perfect debut for an actor like Edward Norton, who just showcased his ability to go from innocent altar boy to something else.
Primal Fear has that Kaiser Soze type reveal that stays with you for a long time, and that's because of Ed Norton.
Bishop Rushman was laying on the floor. There was blood all over everything. And then I seen a shadow. I seen a person.
They apparently auditioned about 2,000 people, but Edward Norton just blew them away.
The role really is pretty demanding. I mean, he has to have this kind of slack-jawed innocence, and then he also has to be able to sort of turn on a dime into somebody who's really menacing enough to scare, you know, Frances McDormand and Richard Gere, and that is saying something.
Where is Aaron? Aaron's crying off in some corner somewhere. You scared him off. You gotta deal with me now, boy.
This movie was only a few years before Fight Club, which I think is still probably his most famous role, and probably the best example of how Edward Norton can play an average Joe who's a little bit unassuming and you don't kind of think of as being super threatening, and then you start to see how he can turn on a dime.
Edward Norton is such a brilliant, brilliant actor, right? And I think there's a million performances from him that I would pick out and like, look at how brilliant Edward Norton is. And Primal Fear is one of those situations where it's like, you look at it, the only reason people love Primal Fear so much is he's cheating. He's playing two characters. You put them together and all of a sudden it seems like one big amazing performance. It's really two separate performances that are cut together to look amazing, and it worked. And thank God it worked, because it gave us one of the most brilliant performers we have in this generation.
Sandra Oh is known around the world now. She's been on major shows like Grey's Anatomy, Killing Eve, but when she first started out in Canada, she was in a little film called Double Happiness, directed by Mina Shum.
Sandra Oh in Double Happiness, I think what is interesting about her position in that one is, along with her, it's also Mina Shum's debut film. And the two of them are introducing Asian culture in Canadian cinema in a way that we hadn't quite seen before.
Mina Shum was actually a small bit part actor on The Diary of Evelyn Lau, Sandra Oh's first TV role, and she just kind of loved her, came up to her and said, hey, I've got this script, would you like to be in my movie? It's one of those things that you think would never happen, but it worked so perfectly.
你唔識睇中文？你真係喺香港出世㗎？你係咪中國人啊？係啊。
Double Happiness is a really moving and effective film about a young Asian Canadian woman who's trying to navigate her relationship to the arts and acting. And I think in her debut, Sandra Oh ends up kind of playing a version of herself, albeit a Chinese Canadian instead of a Korean Canadian, which she is.
Yes, a very good Chinese accent I can do for you.
You're seeing her do multiple different accents. You see her do Tennessee Williams.
I woke up and found myself in the arms of a stranger.
I know you're up there.
Okay, shut up, I'm coming.
Really, it was like, this is your acting showcase. You want to be a mega superstar? Let's show everyone what you can do. And Double Happiness really gives Sandra Oh the chance to do that, and she shines.
Rosie Perez stakes her claim in the opening credits of Do the Right Thing.
She's part of the movie's ensemble. She has a presence elsewhere in Spike Lee's film. But what she is she's almost like the avatar of the movie's fighting spirit.
It was just really exciting to see an Afro-Latina woman. She was doing dances authentically from her neighborhood, and it just felt so raw, so real to me. When I was younger, I would practice dances with my friends, and seeing Rosie Perez do those moves was cool, and you just wanted to be her.
So this is a very punchy debut for Rosie Perez, who was discovered first by Spike Lee as a dancer in a club and through her work on Soul Train.
Do the Right Thing is notable for many things, and one of the things that doesn't often get talked about is just how great Rosie Perez is in this film. As Tina, you see that she is a woman who is frustrated.
She shows the frustration of a young woman with a child, and it's a super hot day, and her boyfriend's just being a jerk.
Mom, come on, movie, that's out. Hold up, wait a minute. First of all, it is too hot, all right? And if you think I'm gonna let you get some, put your clothes on and leave here, and I'll see your black ass for another week, you must be bugging.
I see you tomorrow.
Yeah, right, and my name is Boo Boo the Fool.
I think one of the low-key things that Rosie Perez is so good at in Do the Right Thing is selling how hot it is. Obviously, everybody's hot. It's a big part of the movie, but she just seems to be dying. But she's trying to have a good time. She's trying to have chemistry with her boyfriend, with the father of her child, but you can just see that she is so hot.
I love that this tiny Puerto Rican woman stuck it out, despite people making fun of her accent and her voice, to become the star she is today.
I'm a 40-year-old woman, and I'm just discovering now that I have such a crush on Aidan Quinn, and that's because of his debut role in Reckless.
The fun thing about Reckless is that Aidan Quinn in Reckless is not Aidan Quinn in anything else you've ever seen him in. He's basically a mannequin. So is Daryl Hannah. It's nobody's fault. This is just how that movie was made. It's very, very silly. It's an erotic thriller before the concept of an erotic thriller was there and no one knew what to call them or how to make them, really. It's just about sexy people being sexy in sexy situations.
Oh, Davey, take him to your room. Come on.
Aidan Quinn started off as a theater actor, but Reckless is kind of a totally different thing for him. It's just all about how he looks, all about how handsome he is, and all about him taking his shirt off.
The movie Reckless is everything you would want out of your bad boy. He drives a motorcycle, he has a troubled past, he's got an alcoholic dad, but he still has a heart of gold and he wants to take care of him. He just needs someone to love him so badly. And all of this comes together in the very, very pretty boy face of Aidan Quinn.
Aidan Quinn was cast for Reckless on the strength of a single Polaroid photo. And I think when you watch him in this film, you get it. No one has ever looked like this, except for maybe James Dean on screen.
Reckless is this totally heightened 80s version of kind of the, angry teen rebel boy. It's James Dean, but totally off the rails.
James Dean comes up again. You got anyone who wears a leather jacket with their hair slicked back, they're gonna get compared to James Dean.
I think A Star is Born during the prom dance sequence where cinematographer Michael Ballhaus's roving camera captures Johnny's manic dance moves.
I think audience members would have gotten nauseous or become dizzy watching this, and yet we can't keep our eyes off of Aidan Quinn's dancing.
The thing that keeps it from being unwatchable is the two leads and how much fun they seem to be having in this deadly serious story.
For all those working actors out there that haven't had their big break, Alan Rickman had it in his 40s. I mean, he was a huge actor in theater, but he wasn't in movies until Die Hard.
There's this production of Dangerous Liaisons that did so well in London, it came over to Broadway. John McTiernan and Joel Silver actually saw him in Dangerous Liaisons, and that's what made them think of him for Die Hard.
What Alan Rickman brings to Die Hard that makes him live in my heart forever is that he makes a vaudeville villain feel believable.
Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee-ki-yay, mother.
When you think 80s action movie villain, it's gotta be Alan Rickman, right? Who else?
Yeah, he's suave, he's in control of the situation.
He's in his way kind of so funny and so smooth and so egomaniacal. You don't want his scenes to end.
A funny thing that Alan Rickman credits to his age and experience in acting is he actually said that he didn't really understand the role of an actor in a Hollywood film and offered a lot of notes on the script to the producers. He said he got totally chewed out for, overstepping, but at the same time, he really noticed that all those notes he made were taken into the script. The big note that everyone credits Alan Rickman with is that Hans Gruber is dressed like a businessman instead of a terrorist. He is a villain in disguise.
Please, God, no, you're one of them, aren't you? You're one of them.
The producer overheard Alan Rickman speak in an affected American accent and realized that, you can do a really good American accent. Wouldn't it be amazing if we have this scene where you meet John McClane and he doesn't know that you're the bad guy in the movie?
It's pretty tricky with that accent. You gotta be on TV with that accent.
It wasn't because Alan Rickman was the best for the role. It wasn't because he was the most enticing. They cast him because he was cheap, because he was new, and they could afford him. And then he ended up being one of the most iconic villains of all time.
Barbra Streisand first appeared on screen in Funny Girl, and there has been absolutely no looking back since then.
When executives were going to make My Fair Lady, they made the horrible mistake of casting Audrey Hepburn instead of Julie Andrews. Julie Andrews had been performing the role for a very long time on Broadway. This obviously blew up in their faces. So when it came time to produce the next massive Broadway sensation, which was Funny Girl, they knew they couldn't make the same mistake. But could this little nobody from Brooklyn really take what she had been doing on stage and transport it to a screen? The answer was yes. Like, have you seen her in that movie? She is amazing. Fanny Brice is the role she was born to play.
Barbra Streisand is one of those performers where, a bit like Marilyn Monroe, someone could explain her performance style to you, but if you've never seen it for yourself, you're probably picturing the wrong thing.
I don't think I've ever seen a performance that's so committed emotionally, but also comedically.
Are you sure you can roller skate?
Can I roller skate?
She's like a nuclear weapon in this movie, you know? Like, she doesn't just sing the songs, she clobbers them. She hits them out of the park, she explodes them.
I think Barbra Streisand's performance in Funny Girl set the stage for people to follow and become multidisciplinary but still modern stars. It was kind of a throwback to the golden era of Hollywood.
One of the things that I think is so fascinating is she's playing a real-life person named Fanny Brice, who was a huge vaudeville star that was so popular in vaudeville that she ended up on Broadway. And then Barbra Streisand plays her as a teenager on Broadway and gets so popular that she ends up in Hollywood. So it almost feels like Barbra Streisand kind of stepped into the role of a new Fanny Brice for a new generation.
We have all fallen for Barbra Streisand watching Funny Girl, and apparently that happened to Omar Sharif as well. They started a real-life romance while on set, and it really just proves that Barbra Streisand could entice anyone.
The case can be made that Kathleen Turner, sort of one of the erotic Hollywood icons of the 1980s, she had this amazing run playing these characters whose either romantic lives or whose sexual lives are kind of placed front and center in a number of very different kinds of movies, culminating in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where she plays this cartoon femme fatale. She sort of had the tryout for that part, and really for her whole run in the 80s comes in Body Heat by Lawrence Kasdan.
When Kathleen Turner showed up in Los Angeles for an audition, it was not Body Heat she was auditioning for. It was for a movie starring Peter Falk called All the Marbles, which is a mud wrestling movie. But while she was there, she was pestering her agent over and over again for a movie that was also auditioning in New York called Body Heat. Her agent managed to get her in for an audition in LA, and of course she nailed it.
Of all the neo-noir erotic thriller movies, I think Body Heat is the one that feels the most like what a movie from the 40s could have been like if they didn't need to abide by the production code.
I think one of the things Body Heat was praised for was for taking a lot of the things in 40s movies that had to be innuendo or that had to be suggested or implied and kind of making them explicit. But I think one of the strengths of Turner's acting in that movie is that, and I mean this as a compliment, she could just be superimposed into one of those 40s movies and she would fit.
I waited until I saw her leave. Please don't be angry.
Angry? I'm not angry. How did you get in?
It didn't lock. Ned, hold me. Please, just hold me.
Obviously why Kathleen Turner works in Body Heat is partially her voice that recalls Lauren Bacall, but I think it's really her ability to sell this 40s style patter.
In this film, it just strikes me as so remarkable the number of times where the voice is doing all the work while her face and her body is mostly very still, almost as though she's posing for a tableau.
It was a really interesting role for Kathleen Turner to make her screen debut with, because it's very ambitious, it's very daring. You know, would she be able to keep that level of daringness up? And the answer would turn out to be absolutely.
"2000 was a big year for Gabrielle Union. She starred in Bring It On as well as Love and Basketball, but the year prior was really where she broke out into the industry, and that was with the film She's All That.
Gabrielle Union is a really interesting actor because she had no intention of being an actor. She kind of wanted to be in music videos, but she only got an agent because she worked as an intern at an agency and they offered it to her. She credits a lot of her acting career to her photographic memory. She was just able to memorize things easily.
A lot of the performances in She's All That are kind of camp. They're very much in accordance with a satire on a teen comedy, but Gabrielle Union is very authentic in her performance. She feels like a real person that you might have gone to high school with, and that is a rarity in late 90s teen comedies.
Gabrielle Union talked about how, as a black actress, and, you know, with colorism too, as a darker skinned black actress, that you had to say yes to every role because you might not be asked to do another one.
The most impressive thing with Gabrielle Union was that a lot of her screen time is shared with Lil' Kim, who had released her debut album, I think 3 years prior, and that went double platinum and did really, really well. So everyone was really focused on Lil' Kim in her feature film debut. But actually, Gabrielle Union is the one who steals the show. She's incredibly funny and clever, and her delivery is just on point. And it's not surprising then that 1 year later she goes on to do Bring It On, which is an incredible performance by her, and also just an incredible movie in the 90s as well to go alongside She's All That.
It was really rare in the 1960s to have a performer successfully transition from television to film. Today, that is very possible, but Dick Van Dyke really was in a class of his own. He could seamlessly transition from film to television to Broadway, and then back and forth throughout his career, and that really started with Bye Bye Birdie.
Incredibly, Bye Bye Birdie is Dick Van Dyke's film debut, although he was certainly active long before that. He started as a radio DJ, he was a presenter on various shows.
He's a guy who came up through the theater. He was able to do all sorts of stuff, which you see in Bye Bye Birdie. He is dancing, he's singing, he's doing weird kind of facial comedy.
I mean, the man is just the definition of physical comedy, really.
You get a sense that Dick Van Dyke was just so good at what he did that the rules didn't apply to him. He was someone who had no training as a singer, and there he is on Broadway in Bye Bye Birdie. And he also gets cast in the film version, which wasn't an obvious choice.
I wouldn't necessarily call him a great singer, a great dancer, a great actor.
But is he the ultimate package then?
He is. I mean, he's a great guy. He's a great presence. You can't not love him on screen.
Rosie? You never saw me in pajamas before. You disappointed?
Another lucky thing for Dick Van Dyke is that between his role on Broadway in Bye Bye Birdie and the film Bye Bye Birdie, he got the Dick Van Dyke Show. That was originally a show that was meant to star Carl Reiner, but executives didn't like him. And luckily, he liked Dick Van Dyke enough to say, listen, I'll step to a smaller role, Dick can take the main part.
Dick Van Dyke is such a physical performer. Even when he's not dancing in Bye Bye Birdie, he's just exuding this physicality.
He really loved people like Buster Keaton, so a lot of what he does is honestly just facially reacting to what else is happening around him.
It's just a really joyful romp and an incredible outing for Dick Van Dyke to hit the big screen. And it sort of like shows you what he can do as a song and dance man. That will be shown later on in obviously Mary Poppins and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and his entire film career.
Carbon Copy is a riches to rags story, and it's a film that, while kind of sketchy when watched today, at the very least gave us Denzel Washington.
There's not a lot you can say about Carbon Copy. It's not a good movie. Denzel Washington is George Segal's long-lost son, and somehow that's not even the premise, that's the plot. There's nothing to this film. But you do get to watch Denzel Washington learning how to be a movie star.
Denzel Washington really matches George Segal's sad sack energy in the exact opposite direction.
Makes me still feel like your son, flesh of your flesh, blood of your blood.
Mistake of my mistakes.
You'll feel different after you adopt me.
Denzel Washington just brings this like swagger and smile and energy and power that doesn't make it seem dissonant. It kind of matches it and brings the whole movie up together, and you can't help looking at him. He's just got this incredible star quality.
Carbon Copy is also unusual because you see this wacky comedic side of Denzel. It's not something that he went on to pursue consciously, because he said Sidney Poitier actually told him the first 3 or 4 movies of your career define your whole career and how Hollywood sees you. So he very purposefully made A Soldier's Story and Cry Freedom next, so he wouldn't be stuck in these kind of ribald comedies.
80% of the film is a comedy and it's slapstick, and then the last bit of the film is really hard drama.
Denzel Washington does a speech about his mother in the film, and he just takes you there and holds you in that moment.
She's dead, Mr. Charlie. We'll never see her again, hear her again, touch her again.
It's just kind of like pure, uncut Denzel acting.
He really tells George Segal what he should have been doing and what he didn't do. He's holding back tears, which is actually harder to do than crying, so that makes for a great debut. And he's been playing this kind of one-note sort of guy. And then at this moment, it's being revealed to us that he has bigger depths, hidden depths, and he pulls off that part of the film with equal aplomb.
Even if Carbon Copy isn't a great film, Denzel Washington's performance is great. And you watch this film and you realize that this is a man who knew he had an incredible career ahead of him.
Zosha Rockmore has one of those debuts that I think is such a high watermark that I'm kind of waiting for the rest of her career to catch up to it.
Zosha Rockmore's performance in Precious is much needed moments of levity. This is a very traumatic, very somber film, and Zosha delivers this incredible comedic yet still grounded in reality performance.
Zosha plays Joanne. That's kind of an unusual character for a Lee Daniels drama because it's a pure comedy character.
Once upon a time, in a far away land, there lived a beautiful princess named Joanne. Nah. She was very, very fly and extra, extra tall, and every single boy loved her, big and small.
Zosha Rockmore doesn't have a huge role in Precious, but it was just enough to get her noticed.
Precious also works as a great debut for Zosha because she's working with Lee Daniels, an independent black filmmaker. She came up through the Amazing Grace Conservatory, which is primarily for BIPOC actors, and I think you see that continue throughout her career.
I can't think of a more explosive debut than Michelle Yeoh in Yes, Madam.
I remember just being really awestruck by her and the fact that she was so elegant and so graceful and very feminine as well, but she could obviously really kick ass in a way that she could hold her own amongst the men.
Her first real breakout is Yes, Madam with Cynthia Rothrock, which pretty much invented the girls with gun genre in Hong Kong cinema. Like, after this movie, Michelle Yeoh and Cynthia Rothrock are so cool that they pretty much launched a million other actresses' careers because Hong Kong was just salivating for more badass girls.
There's a lightness that Yeoh had that's not just in terms of her agility, not just in terms of her ability to leap and jump and careen and move and fit the physicality. She gives you the sense, a bit like her friend Jackie Chan, and they are very close friends as well as sometimes co-stars. You get the sense that she's having the time of her life doing it.
Before getting into acting, Michelle Yeoh was actually a ballerina. And she was doing quite well for herself. She was studying in England, but then she had a terrible back injury that took her out of ballet altogether.
Michelle Yeoh talks about how it was actually quite easy for her to learn the Hong Kong fighting style because of her background in ballet.
Even though most Hong Kong movies were dubbed, she knew that she didn't speak well enough to be in comedies or dramas, so instead she focused on action movies where she wouldn't have to talk much.
That was part of why she became such a breakout star, is because she committed herself 100% to hugely physical roles, and she kind of learned to act later.
You've definitely seen Michelle Yeoh in things like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Everything Everywhere All at Once, but if you really want to go back to where it all began, I can't think of a better place to start than Yes, Madam.
The beloved Critters franchise gave starts to two very famous Titanic actors. In Critters 3, we had Leonardo DiCaprio, and in the first Critters, we had Billy Zane making his debut.
What do you think of when you think of Billy Zane?
Well, I love him. The first thing I think of is that hammy guy from Titanic.
This is the thing about Billy Zane, is that he is a chameleon actor, that he can go full ham, and I think those are the performances that people remember the most, but he can also just play a normal guy or just completely do a deadpan performance. When you see him in Critters, he is affable, he's normal, and you wouldn't know that there's so much more zaniness that is about to be unleashed throughout a career where Billy Zane's kind of mantra was, I will say yes to everything.
Billy Zane in Critters is really interesting. It's actually his second screen credit because he played very briefly one of Biff's thugs in Back to the Future. Critters is a little bit different because his role is very marginal, but it's still really funny and really effective.
What do I want to see an old barn for?
Come on, it's romantic. His character Steve is completely expendable. He's basically just there to reiterate the you can never have sex horror rule.
He's trying to get a little fresh with the daughter of the family, and as he's trying to play some seductive music, his fingers get bitten off by a critter.
He's so emotive when he's being disemboweled by these little furry creatures. You really kind of see that he had a future ahead of him.
Apparently, Billy Zane's acting technique actually changed the way some people on set thought, specifically the Chiodo brothers who were puppeting the critters. They said that Billy Zane's ability to think through being eaten by these critters and say, you know what, this time I'm gonna be shocked about it. This time I'm gonna be mad about the critters. This time I'm going to just be in pure pain. It really made them think about how they puppeted the critters a little harder.
I think this is just a lesson for aspiring Hollywood actors. If they're making a Critters movie, star in it, you'll have a career.
Whether you have your debut as the star of the movie or it's just a 5-minute role, I think if you can prove yourself as memorable, that is what people will take away from the movie.
So the next time you see a new actor in a movie, might be worth taking note because this might be the start of an amazing career.